Okay, so we're recording, and this is the Q&A, live Q&A for February for the School Improvement Institute. And one of the things we're going to do, first of all, is to quickly walk through the council video. This video will be up very shortly, within a few minutes of us ending this webinar. But I want to show that to you so you'll see what your council members are doing. And then we'll go back and look at the some information, some updates for the steering team. And then anything else you guys want to talk about, questions that you have for each other, questions you have for us, just anything for the good of the group that we need to talk about, we'd be happy to. So first of all, we're updating root causes this year. So remember, first semester we were implementing this year's school improvement plan. During second semester, we're beginning to write next year's school improvement plan. So we're writing the 16-17 school improvement plan. And last month in January, you created your 16-17 academic goals. So you created your PAIs and, more importantly, your very specific SMART goals. So we're coming into this discussion with your council to look at your SMART goals that you wrote last month, and then just to ask the question, what's getting in the way. So if I go on, then here's what your council is seeing. So the first thing we're doing in the council is just a quick overview, just to put everything into perspective again. So basically we're just kind of going over what I just said. We're asking the council, the question is, given who we are now and the new student data we have, what adjustments do we need to make to our SIP? We're taking them to the process, reminding them that they created SMART goals last month, and now we need to figure out why aren't we achieving those SMART goals, what's getting in the way. And then next month we'll talk about goals, and then after that we'll prepare. Okay, so reminding the council that there's two different products already in place for your 16-17 school improvement plan, and that this month we're working on root causes. We're defining what root causes are. They're things that get in the way. They answer the question, why aren't more students reaching the benchmarks in our goals? We're reminding them that there are general root causes that impact everything, like attendance, and there are specific root causes like lessons are on ratios is absent from the 7th grade curriculum. You know, the specific root causes are specific to one or maybe a couple of the SMART goals. Okay, and then we're also reminding people that in SI2, at least, root causes are supported by data. We don't want to identify root cause just because we have a hunch that it's getting in the way of achievement, but we want to be able to back that up as much as possible with data. So we're just kind of reminding people that root causes, need to have data behind them. Okay, and then one thing, and this is something I wanted to really hit with your steering teams as well, is that from our experience of doing this almost 20 years, when we see schools that really have big gains in achievement, I can almost bet you that that those schools have really paid attention to the root cause data and have made some very good decisions about what's interfering with learning, so their interventions are really focused properly. So I think that in the council video that I just recorded, I really stress that I think this is the most important step, because if your interventions aren't focused on the right root causes, you're just wasting your time. Those root causes are really, really important. And we need to look at both general and specific root causes. Over the years, we've had some schools that have just focused on general, but nothing specific to a specific standard or a specific course or whatever. And those schools don't tend to improve as much. So we really want schools to look at both general and specific root causes, and also for each SMART goal, so that we're really looking one by one at each SMART goal, trying to figure out, okay, what's interfering with that goal? And then looking at the data, the root cause data, and trying to tease that out. So, okay. So then we're kind of leading into the discussion, why aren't students in our school achieving a higher level? We're reminding the council that there's clues in the data, and that they're going to look at 7 different data reports, and just kind of reminding them what those data reports look like. And then we're giving them an example, like if the broad area was to increase the percentage you pass Algebra 1 and course assessment, the SMART goal might be at a specific standard level, and then the root causes are going to help explain, why we're not already reaching that SMART goal. So in the examples that I gave there, 2 of them are specific, 1 of them is broad, because I wanted to show them how you can combine the specific root causes and then also the broad root causes to really have a nice package that you're working on. So, okay, and then we're leading into the discussion. So the first part is we're saying, okay, we're going to study data and give them some time to look at and study that data. And then we're taking them back to the SMART goals, because before they look at the root cause data, we want them to really have in the front of their mind, okay, what are those academic areas that we're trying to target and what's getting in the way of each of them. So then, they pull up the SMART goals, they remind themselves of those. Then we're asking them to print a root cause help sheet. And so they print that root cause help sheet, which looks like this. And one of the things I think is nice, we worked on this really hard last year. This was not actually really easy to do. Was we pulled out all of your SMART goals and put them into this document. So when you pull up this document or when your council members pull up this document for your school, your SMART goals are going to be auto-populated into this report. And then they'll be looking through the data, they'll write possible root causes up at the top, they'll check off the SMART goals that those root causes should address, and then evidence for the root cause. Okay, so after they've printed that sheet then, we take them to the next step, which is to review the 7 SI2 root cause reports. And again, those reports, the 7 of them, link to our Elements of High Achieving Schools that was based on our literature review, but also studying our top gainer schools and looking over the years at what they have in common. We've come up with these Elements of High Achieving Schools. But the one thing I wanted to point out to everybody is that the data that you have in those reports is for you guys, it's a year old, because we only survey every 3 years. So we're not looking at this year's data, we're looking at data that's a year old. And next year, when you do this, we'll be looking at survey data that's 2 years old, again, because we only survey every 3 years. So I wanted to give your council a heads up that the SI2 survey data is that the SI2 survey is only given every 3 years, and then in the circle there it'll tell them when it was that you guys gave your survey last. So then I'm thinking, and you're probably thinking, well, why are we going to look at that data again? We looked at it last year and teased out our root causes. The data hasn't changed, so why paw through it again? So I want to answer that question for the council, and here are the reasons. One is, let's say you had 3 root causes that you're really working on addressing, and you successfully addressed all of them. Your interventions got in place. You put that ratios unit in the 7th grade math curriculum, and the kids did great on ratios on the assessments this year. So that's no longer a root cause for you. It's in there. It's going. So it may be, if you have successfully addressed your root causes, it may be that you now have time and energy to address some new root causes. So we want to look through that again. The other thing is that your perspective may have changed, and we see this actually quite a lot. For example, let's say that there's a high school that really the light bulb hadn't gone off for them last year about how important AP courses were for students in their building. And so when they were looking through their survey data and they saw that their students didn't plan to take an AP course while they're in high school, that really wasn't a big concern, because the school wasn't really fired up about AP, didn't understand at that point didn't think that was important for kids to do anyway, so the data didn't disturb them. But maybe now the light bulb has gone off, and they think, man, all of our kids should be taking an AP class, or as many of our kids as possible, and it's really not good that our kids don't plan to take an AP test. So because your perspective has changed, the data speaks to you differently. So again, we just want to look through that data and see, you know, given who we are now, is there anything that root cause data that jumps out differently than it did a year ago? And then we'll do the same thing next year. So, okay, so just wanted to explain that, and then we lead from there with your council into the discussion, and we're giving them some tips on how to complete that help sheet. So let's say I'm reading through all the data, and one of the things that I think might be a possible root cause is that students who are 2 years behind in math do not get extra help in math. And so I've identified that as a root cause, and so then I look through all the SMART goals, which is it going to impact, and I see that, you know, there's several math SMART goals in there, so I check those off. And then the root cause evidence was in the turnaround self-study. The steering team told me that that wasn't being provided. Okay, and then here's another example. Students do not complete homework. This is a general root cause, so I've just put a check in that general row, which means, you know, that it would impact everything. And then what's the data source? You know, a certain percentage of students said on the SI2 survey that they were not completing their homework. So, okay. So that's kind of it. That's what we want your council to do. But there is a lot more data that's available. We really debated how much data to have your council look at. I think the 7 reports is enough. I think if you gave them more than that, they would just feel totally overwhelmed. But for the go-getters on your council, we thought that it might be really good for them to have all of the data to look at, to be accessible to them. So the first thing is the root cause drill down reports. So we're helping your folks understand that the survey data can be drilled down all these different ways. So if they're, you know, if they're part of the Hispanic community and they're wondering, well, I wonder what Hispanic kids said on these questions, they can pull up that drill down report and look. Or if they're, you know, if they're an advocate for the low-income families in your community, they can look at the free and reduced lunch data to see, you know, are there root cause gaps there? So again, we're kind of looking for what we've started calling root cause gaps. In other words, it's a root cause that's impacting some student groups at a greater level than other student groups, and in that, the drill down reports will be able to tell you that. Okay, and then we are this year. This is new. We wanted to give everybody access to the self-studies, and so your council members can open up any of those self-studies that you've completed, and those self-studies actually are new data because you update those every year in the short answer questions. So they can open up any of those self-studies and see, is there anything in those that would kind of trigger for them, oh, this is maybe a root cause that, you know, didn't get teased out in the SI2 surveys and reports. So, for example, in the Indiana turnaround principles, one of the things that you had to check off on that one was if principals did walkthroughs for mentoring purposes in classrooms on a frequent basis. And that actually is the one that in all of our SI2 schools probably had the most responses of no to. But that may be something that, you know, you start to think, well, you know, that may be a good idea, and maybe that is a general root cause, that if we were doing that, you know, that would help. So all those other reports might tease out some other things to think about, and so we wanted to include them. But again, optional, because, oh my gosh, that is a ton of data for a council member to look at. Not too much for a steering team member, I think, certainly, but definitely, I think, too much for a council member. So, okay. So then the next part with your council, we're just leading him into the questions. So we're listing each of the root causes that are in your current school improvement plan, and we're just saying, you know, do you think that this root cause should be continued next year or omitted for next year? So they would just, you know, check one of those two, and then what revisions, you know, should be made if we're going to keep it. Are there any revisions that we should make? So, and that may be one thing I could anticipate coming up there, is that, you know, maybe when you wrote this root cause the first time, it seemed like a general root cause, that it I'm sorry, it seemed like a root cause that applied to all students, but as you dug deeper into the data, you found that this is really just an issue for our free and reduced lunch kids. And so you may want to tweak that root cause to say, student behaviors interfere with learning for free and reduced lunch kids, or, that's probably a silly one, but you get the point that you're going to kind of fine-tune the root cause. Okay, one more thing here, and we'll talk about this a little later when we get to the steering team tips for this month. But some of these root causes, if you may remember, and again I'm going to cover this again in a little bit more depth, but some of your root causes last year you put in just because there was an external expectation that, for example, you addressed attendance. And so in our old system, we used to have to put in attendance as a root cause so that when we implemented when we wrote in your intervention for attendance, there was a root cause to attach it to. We have a different way of doing that this year. So we do not this year need to enter any external expectations as root causes. I think that's going to simplify your work a lot, and it just made a lot more sense that it's, if attendance isn't really an issue at your school, it's not a root cause. So why are we putting it there? So the only root causes that you'll put in are root causes that are really root causes in your school. Now, that said, because we're carrying these forward, you may have some things that you put in just because the DOE said that you had to address this in your school improvement plan. So you may see root cause attendance or root cause annual parent meeting, or all the things that Title and Focus and Priority Schools are required to do. Those all went in last year as root causes. So we gave your council a heads up on this as well, that if there was something that didn't make sense to them, and it might be an external expectation, and we're working this year to get those out here, so they could just click omit this root cause next year. So in other words, if they don't think it's really a root cause, they would recommend to omit it. So, but just wanted to give you a heads up that as you're looking at this, you may see some things that look more like strategies or just topics, like annual parent meeting, which is a Title I thing. So if so, just click, that you recommend, as you're taking the participating in the discussion, just click that you recommend to omit that root cause for next year. Okay, and then finally, we give folks a place to update, to add any new root causes. They would just type those in there, and then there's finally a box at the bottom for them to write whatever else they want to write. So, okay, so that's that for them, and then we're just giving them a heads up that after today, the steering team will consider all of their input, create a root cause list, and then send it out to the advisory council members for their consensus. So, okay, so one of the things that I think you all will need to think about is, once again, are you going to have this as an online discussion, or is this going to be a face-to-face discussion? If it is a face-to-face discussion, you could have people, let me back up, you could ahead of time ask people to get to this point, review all of the review all the SI2 reports, and I didn't go back far enough, and fill out the help sheet. And then face-to-face, you could talk about, for each of your root causes, do we keep it or omit it? Just have that as a discussion. So again, let me just say that again. You would have people review the SI2 root cause reports at home on their own, fill out this help sheet at home on their own, and then come to your meeting for the discussion. So that would be one way if you wanted to do part of this face-to-face. And then the other thing that you could do is just do it all at the meeting. Have a two-part meeting where the first part is everybody's working individually to fill out the help sheet, and then everybody comes together to discuss which root causes you're going to keep or omit and which new root causes you need. So, okay. I have a couple of tips for you, and then I think that's all the content that I wanted to share. Let me go to a different PowerPoint. Let's see. Oops. Come back. Okay. Okay. So here are a few little tips. And a little bigger here. Okay. So a few little tips. First of all, actually, we'll come back to that. So tips for facilitating this month's discussion. First of all, if you haven't watched the council video, we kind of just went through it, so I don't know if you really feel like you need to, but if you don't feel like my quick walkthrough was enough, make sure you watch that. And then tips. So the student body discussion this time is just a very open-ended question. What is getting in the way of learning at our school? So, and just let the kids kind of take off. You may need to give them a few examples, to get the discussion started. But from the students' perspective, what do they think is getting in the way of learning? What interferes with their learning at school? So we'll just see what they have to add. Then before you open the council discussion, we need to make sure that you're really happy with your PAIs and your SMART goals. So I would open up the achievement goal report and just make sure everything's worded the way you want it to be, and that everything's in there and edited and all that, because we drop those SMART goals into the root cause help sheet. So we want to make sure that everything's worded exactly the way you want it. So check that, please. And then after the meeting, before writing your root causes, there's a couple things to consider. And actually, I forgot one here that I'll add in before we film this. But one is you want to consider all the input from the council. Did they note root causes in the SI2 root cause reports that they think are interfering with learning? Two, this is the one I'm adding in, input from your student body. And then the next one is we want you, and you really should, look at those drill down reports. So for example, let's say that the council said that one of the root causes that they saw was that students, let's say, don't plan to sign up for an AP class. And now you can dig deeper to ask, well, which students are not signing up for AP? Is it is it boys? Is it girls? Is it Hispanic? Is it whites? Is it free and reduced lunch students? And if you find that, again, that you have a root cause gap, then you'll want to tweak your intervention to address that gap. So for example, in the work that we've done with AP, we find often that it's low-income kids that don't sign up for AP classes, so the free and reduced lunch students. And so now, okay, so what interventions do you put in place to get the free and reduced lunch kids to sign up? So it's not across the board that kids aren't signing up for AP, it's just that specific group. So once you know what you think your root causes are going to be, then as a steering team, we do want you to dig down into the data to see, is this a problem across the board, or is this a problem for a certain group of students? So please do as much as you can. We want to find out, do we have root cause gaps there? And then finally, the other thing we want to make sure that the steering team does is to dig into all of those self-studies. And again, we're not going to worry about addressing the things that are in the self-studies until we get to interventions. But we want you to just look in there to see, are there any really good ideas that these outside groups, the Indiana Department of Education, the turnaround principles, the federal Department of Ed, are there any best practices that they're suggesting that maybe you should be doing in your school and is really a root cause? It's something that's missing that's impacting learning. So at any rate, so we want you to look both at the drill down reports and at the self-studies before you finalize on your root causes. This will take some time, I know, but remember the schools that have the biggest gains in achievement tend to be the schools that do this really well, this step. So, okay. And this is, I kind of have been alluding to this, but this is new. So you should include a root cause that comes from any of the external expectations only if it's an actual root cause for your school. So that's different than last year. Last year we said, okay, if you're aligning with PL 221, PL 221 says all schools have to address attendance, so you need to put attendance in as a root cause. We're not doing that this year because it isn't really a root cause for your school. We're not going to do that until we get to interventions. And then the second bullet there, if you have any root causes that got carried forward that were really only in there to meet some external expectation, we'd like you to omit those, get that root cause section cleaned up. I think you're going to like that a lot better. It's less work for you from this point on. And then also it just cleans it up that we only have root causes in your school improvement plan that are actual root causes for your school. Now, what's not new is that we started doing this last year. So when we get to the intervention section, you'll put in an intervention for attendance. But if attendance isn't an issue at your school, instead of linking it to a root cause, we're just going to say this is an external expectation. This is to meet an external expectation. So we're not then claiming that we're linking to an issue at your school when that issue doesn't really exist. So when we get in a minute while we're chatting, please ask me any questions about that. I think it's much cleaner. We kind of thought about this late last year and wanted to make it operational this year. So I think that's it. Just a reminder, so in terms of what those external expectations are, if you are using your school improvement plan for PL 221, you probably have a root cause in that says attendance and cultural competency. If those are not issues at your school, take them out. And remember, we're putting them in, but we're going to do it in interventions. So for priority schools, you have to address each of the turnaround principles, so you probably have those in there as root causes. And again, if they're not real root causes for your school, you should take them out. But my guess is that probably a lot of those, if you're a priority school, probably a lot of those are real root causes in your school. So focus school, you have to do at least one of the turnaround principles. So you'll have one in there. But again, if it's not a real one, then we want to take it out and we'll address it in interventions. Title I, yeah, so you may have a root cause that just says highly qualified teachers. So if you don't feel like that's a root cause at your school, take it out. We'll still put the intervention in for highly qualified teachers. We're just gonna explain why we're doing it in interventions. We're doing it just to meet an external expectation. Okay, so then looking ahead, just real quickly, this month, we're working on root causes. In March, we'll update your interventions. And then in April and May, we'll talk about preparation to implement those interventions next year. So I think that's it. Don't forget to call Tina if you have any questions about any of this. And now, a couple things, odds and ends. So your school improvement plan is due to DOE before March 1st. I have a request into DOE to provide the URL for me so we can provide a link in our materials where you can link to DOE's page and then upload your PDF. One of the things, there's been a little bit of confusion with a couple of schools. The school improvement plan that's due on March 1st to DOE is your 15-16 school improvement plan. That's the one you finished writing last June, and you've been implementing it all year. We just need to get a copy of it to DOE. So it's not the plan that you're currently writing. That's next year's plan. It's the one you finished last June. So you'll just upload that by March 1st, and then you're all good to go with that. The other thing that we've not heard anything about, and we have an inquiry in with DOE about this also, is last year you may remember that, excuse me, last year you may remember that focus and priority schools had to turn in a separate student achievement plan to DOE. There's a lot of overlap between the student achievement plan and the school improvement plan. We've not heard anything about a student achievement plan this year, but we do want DOE to confirm that schools are not going to be asked to turn in an SAP. If any of the schools in on this call, if you've heard about that, let's fill everybody in, but we've not heard that yet from DOE. And I'm hoping to hear something back soon, and we'll get that information out as soon as we can. If they do require an SAP, remember last year we aligned everything with the SAP, so you'll be ready to go. You've got everything in the system that you need for the SAP. We just don't know if DOE is still going to require it. So, okay, so that's that, and that's it. And then the other thing was the learning community that you're participating in. So, okay, that's what I have. Let's open up the mics. Let's see what everybody else has to say. Okay, anybody? Questions? Comments? Let me ask, I know Steve, you're always up on stuff because you kind of wear several hats in your school, including central office. Have you heard anything about SAP for focus and priority schools? Is that, we've not heard anything.
No, I've not. No, I haven't heard anything about that, Sue.
Okay, okay. So last year we all heard like 2 weeks before it was due, almost literally. I mean, it was really a quick turnaround. So we'll try to find that out right away for everybody. Any questions about cleaning up the root causes so that we're taking out the ones that are just done because of external expectations? Any other questions? Everything was clear as day? I'm not seeing any hands up. I'm not seeing any questions. Okay, so you know where to find Tina. Please feel free to call us, and sometimes things this year have happened so quickly and without a lot of notice. So again, we really appreciate it when you guys get communications from DOE, when you immediately let us know. Sometimes superintendents or principals will get that information before anybody else, and so please keep us in the loop so that we can adjust our system to serve you. One other thing, we are going to be advertising for a new cohort for SI2. I think we're going to do a kind of a quick and dirty version of SI2. I don't know if that's the word to use, but if you think about it, almost all of the schools in the state are just finishing up writing their 15-16 plan, which is due March 1st. And so on March 2nd, they'll be starting to write their 16-17 plan, and that will be due in, I don't know, August, or DOE has said it's not going to be as late as it was this year. But so I think we're going to offer a quick version of SI2, which will probably not involve an advisory council, or not to the extent that we normally do, just to get schools started in and through the process so that they can spit out a school improvement plan by next fall, and then they'll start creating, using our regular process with all of the input from the community stakeholder groups and teachers and all of that. So principals, you probably will see an email or a letter coming from us in a couple of weeks about this. We want to be all ready to go when it's on March 2nd. We want people to be able to say, okay, we just finished our 15-16 plan. We know that our 16-17 plan is due in a few months, and now we need help, and we'd like to be able to provide that for them. So yeah, so look for that coming out. I think that's about it. Tina, anything to add before we close, or anybody?
I believe so. Just keep calling. Thank you for sending in the submissions. There's a lot of hard work going on out there. It's appreciated, and I'm available anytime.
That sounds good. That sounds good. Yeah. Okay, that's it. Thank you all so much. And it was a quick one this month, but we'll talk with everybody next month. And please feel free to give us a call, of course. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.